Located in the shadows of the Olympic Mountains, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport is the gateway to the Pacific Northwest of the United States. Having seen 52.6 million passengers in 2024, Seattle-Tacoma, or SeaTac for short, is currently the 14th busiest airport in the US, situated between Orlando International and Charlotte Douglas. SeaTac is one of many airports in the region, with the Pacific Northwest having some of the richest connections in the world to aviation and the wider technology industry. This largely comes thanks to the Boeing Aircraft Company, having 3 of their most important production facilities here, in addition to other multi-billion-dollar companies such as Google, Microsoft, Starbucks, and Amazon, all calling Seattle home. But what made Seattle-Tacoma the airport it is today? In this video, we will explore what brought SeaTac to prominence. Unlike many airports of the time, Seattle's airport was largely a clean sheet design from the ground up, where other airports, such as those in San Francisco or Boston, were initially designed around grass strips and developed through military involvement during the war. SeaTac was designed with all the advancements the war brought already in mind. The need for an airport arose in the early 1920s, and was proposed as a joint operation, shared between the ports of Seattle and Tacoma. However, these plans were initially rejected after legislative changes in 1941, allowing the formation of municipally run airports. Interest for the project was reignited. Development began on the 2nd of January, 1943. The airport would have 4 intersecting runways to counter crosswind operations, and would see its first ceremonial landing on the 31st of October, 1944, from a United Airlines Douglas DC-3 carrying public officials. Low-level passenger operations did begin in 1945, however, were quashed by the United States military's need to use the field as a pre-delivery staging area for B-29 bombers. It would take another 2 years before the airport would open to passengers in earnest. With a newly completed passenger terminal, SeaTac officially opened its gates to passengers on the 1st of September, 1947. However, wasn't dedicated until the 9th of July, 1949. On this day, the airport was opened to the public and hosted around 30,000 people to see the event. SeaTac was hailed as America's most advanced airport, with its long runways and spacious terminal for the time. For the technologies of the era, the airport seemed to be future-proofed. At this time, the airport was served by numerous recognizable brands of the time, including Northwest Airlines, Western Airlines, Pan Am, Alaska Airlines, and TransCanada Airlines by 1951. The intersecting runway layout soon became redundant during the mid-1950s, as aircraft became more able to handle crosswind conditions. The north-south runway, runway 16/34, became the airport's primary direction. The 1961 World Fair, which Seattle was hosting, was the airport's excuse to modernize yet again, in an effort to highlight what Seattle had to offer right from the moment passengers arrived. To prepare for the fair and to future-proof the airport further, SeaTac lengthened its runways by an additional 800 meters, or 2,600 feet, and opened a new concourse with wider gates to allow for jet traffic. That jet traffic came in October of 1961, with a Boeing 707 service connecting the airport with Honolulu. The airport would continue to expand throughout the 1960s, with it continuing to expand its international footprint, with Scandinavian Airlines launching service here in 1966 using a polar routing, marking its first European service. The beginning of the 1970s saw SeaTac be the origin of one of the world's greatest unsolved crimes. On the afternoon of the 24th of November, 1971, Northwest Airlines Flight 305, a Boeing 727-100 with 42 passengers and crew on board, left Seattle bound for Portland, Oregon. On board was a passenger by the name of Dan Cooper. He had bought a one-way ticket at the airport for the flight, in cash, and was carrying a black attaché briefcase. Once airborne, he proceeded to hijack the aircraft. It would land in Portland without incident, and his ransom was $200,000 and a parachute for the release of the passengers, which he received. He then ordered the plane back into the air, strapped the parachute on, and proceeded to jump out of the plane over Washington State using the 727's rear access stairs. He was never heard from again, and the mystery of what happened to the man known as Dan Cooper has endured to this day.
Even with the employment downturn in Seattle in the 1970s, the airport still saw major expansions. The decade saw the addition of 2 satellite terminals, as well as doubling the public road infrastructure and adding a car park just to meet demand. Furthermore, the airport added a subway rail connection between the 2 terminals. These driverless trains were the first of their kind in the United States. By the end of this expansion, SeaTac was running like a finely tuned engine. By the late 1980s, SeaTac had 2 runways and was beginning to feel the strain. Owing to the dramatic increase in the use of regional airlines and aircraft, as well as Seattle's growing prominence as a cargo hub, proposals for a 3rd runway were drafted. The most suitable spot for this 3rd runway was determined to be to the west of the existing 2, but was met by backlash from the towns affected, such as Des Moines, Federal Way, and Tukwila, among others. After no other suitable spots were found, the Port Authority approved plans for the 3rd runway west of the current 2 in 1996. However, construction could not begin until all appeals against it were dropped. Ground wasn't broken on this project until 2004, and it wouldn't be completed until 2008, at the cost of $1.1 billion. More recently, SeaTac has been showing its age. Again, passenger numbers have crept beyond what the airport was designed for. With many buildings dating back from the 1970s, the Port Authority announced plans for a new international arrivals facility in 2017. The facility, which opened 3 years behind schedule in 2022, is built along the east side of the domestic Concourse A facility and consists of 16 wide-body gates and 4 narrow-body ones. The project's most eye-catching feature is its 26-meter or 85-foot-tall bridge spanning above the taxiway. This project came at a cost of $968 million. Today, the airport still has many construction projects underway in order to accelerate the passenger experience, and hopes to be ready for the 2026 World Cup, which the United States is hosting. These upgrades include more efficient TSA security equipment, with hopes to scan up to 600 extra passengers an hour. Furthermore, new baggage systems are being implemented to again speed the passenger experience up, and new space for shopping and eateries is being made available. All this comes as part of a $5 billion upgrade in time for the World Cup. Today, the airport is a major hub for SkyTeam and Oneworld Airlines, through Delta Airlines and Alaska Airlines. This is largely down to the city's major tech industries, but also because of its advantageous geographical position to Asia and Alaska. Alaska and Delta Airlines hold 49% and 20% market share respectively, with them both serving the airport's busiest destination, Anchorage, Alaska, for which SeaTac has become a gateway. SeaTac is the busiest airport in the American Northwest, and is likely to remain so. It is suggested that the Seattle area could grow by another 1 million people by 2035, and the airport has to be ready. As of now, over 30 projects are in the planning phase or are already under construction. It is said that the airport could be a construction site for another 10 to 20 years before all its projects are completed. In the meantime, though, it has become clear that Seattle-Tacoma's managers have the passengers in mind, in order to make the airport an acceptable first impression of the United States. Having come from humble beginnings, the airport's staff have not shied away from the future and the challenges that await them. SeaTac has always strived to be a world-class airport, and it appears to be making every effort to succeed in its mission.